Now, that's culture shock. So culture shock, here I am, I've been prepared to live in Ireland. I find myself in Rio and I go, wow. Nice culture shock. But then maybe I go to Saudi Arabia and I go, oh. Because women's dress is culturally and sociologically prescribed, isn't it? So Rio, yeah. Saudi Arabia, oh. Now what Toffler says is in the future, you won't have to go anywhere. You will stay exactly in your own society. But your society will change so rapidly that you will get left behind. This is the risk. It is called future shock. That you can stay where you are, never get on an airplane, and all of a sudden you look around and you are a stranger in your own society. Now what Toffler was talking, of course, was about the rate of technological change. Technology is changing rapidly. It used to move very, very slowly. But the pace at which technology changes has speeded up immensely. So now, today, social outcasts are people who don't have iPhones or Blackberries. So people like my mother is retired. She is not really engaged in technological advancement, but she finds she won't, if I leave my computer on the desk at home, she won't touch it because she thinks it will explode. In fact, I said, "Ma'am, don't touch my computer or it will explode." That's the kind of son I am. But there's a serious note to that. My mother is a pensioner. She's disengaged from work. She's interested in her family, her grandchildren, and me. And that's okay, because we're going to look after her. But if you can imagine yourself as an 18-year-old in a society where you've not had access to computers, and often very poor people do not, or the internet, you could be living in a very different world. So those of you here today with all of that technological knowledge, you may have more in common with people in Mumbai and Beijing than you may have in some very poor cities or towns in Amazonia. Isn't that possibly true? So the future has risks. And the big future risk is, according to Toffler, being left behind. Hugely risky. There are others. Now, the second philosophical area is this. If you don't know what the future is, if you don't know what the future entails, how do you prepare for it? Very difficult, isn't it? Well, actually, there's a very simple answer. The best way to prepare for the future is to create it, if you can. And that's probably what Steve Jobs will be remembered for. Steve Jobs created the future. You didn't need an iPhone until he made it. You didn't need an iPad until he made it. And now you will kill if anyone takes that away. He created a lot of the future, did he not? I didn't know I needed an iPhone to listen to music or iTunes. He redirected all of this. So in the future, it is the person who comes up with new and creative ideas who will be king, who will be rich. So these companies, Apple, essentially if you look at Apple, it gave you a means to record your music, to take phone calls, to use your computing, but it put those things not at the periphery of your lives, but at the center of your lives. And that is an element of future working. Does that make sense? So it's not easy. Who knows what's coming next? Next year, someone may have developed a device that I throw in the air and I can see 3D pictures of everyone I know. Who knows? And then all of a sudden we will be throwing our iPads into the bin and we all need this new device. So the future really belongs to people who create it, is the argument. Now, a second thing, when I left London, I didn't know about Steve Jobs, so this is a little bit contextually, it's arisen at kind of a late stage, but I think there's something else relevant. So Steve Jobs is really interesting for whatever else, but he kind of showed that if you take risks and build things, it's a very risky strategy, but you can alter the nature of society and the nature of how people live a little bit. But the second thing Steve Jobs said, and I saw this on one of the obituaries on the news, and I thought it was very fantastic, and this is advice I always give to students, is this, and he was talking to American students when he said it. they would say to him, how do I, succeed? How do you brilliant? And his advice is the same advice I'm going to give you. And this is advice I always get, but it was very heartwarming to hear it from himself as well. And that is that you must follow your passion. If you are looking for something to succeed, you have to discover what your passion is. And he said to American students when he addressed them that even if that takes a long time, spend a long time discovering what it is about you that makes you happy. What is your passion? So, for example, traditionally, music is not something that would have made you very successful. But having a passion for music, engaging with music and technological change can make you very successful. And that piece of advice is king. So there are three elements at least to the currently emerging economy. Now, one is the knowledge economy, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. The second is globalization, and the third, diversity. But really, I'm going to talk about knowledge economy working. Have you all come across the term knowledge economy? It's sometimes called an information economy. Has everyone come across that term? I'm going to take that as a yes. I always take silence as a yes. It gets me into lots of trouble, but it allows me to move on. How do we start to think about what we mean by a knowledge economy? And I'll try a little bit of history, if that's okay with everyone. If you were looking at the history of development of humankind on the planet and how we arrange our lives, it would run something like this. There are thousands of years of history where man and woman just walked around chasing animals, killing them, and living in the Stone Age. We don't know when that began. We don't know how long it lasted, but we know it existed. But from a human civilization point of view, we know that several thousands of years, those Stone Age people started to farm, and we have the development of agricultural economy. So, agricultural economy is an economy where people are working on the land, living on the land. Access to land is really, really important. So that's an agricultural economy. It's quite simple to understand, isn't it? Who's rich in an agricultural society? The owner of the land. Landlords are rich. If society is organized around land, owning that land is really important. Now, if you look at, again, if you don't mind if I refer to European history, but I know Brazil is related to Portuguese history. But if you look at Portugal and Spain and even the United Kingdom, well, the United Kingdom, we have a queen at the moment. And essentially, she is head chief landowner. That's how she becomes the queen. And beneath her, there are lords and ladies of the land. And so too in Spain. So although there's no longer really, well, the United Kingdom is certainly no longer an agricultural society, agricultural society was so important, it built a medieval structure of aristocracy, and on top of that came a monarchy, and that's how society was formed. Does that make sense? So in an agricultural society, access to land and ownership of land is hugely, hugely important. Landlords are important. In medieval Europe, in medieval UK, landlords were so important, they had enormous powers. And I refer these examples to the young ladies in the auditorium. Your landlord would choose you a husband. And God forbid, if you were married and happily married and you became widowed, your landlord would find you a new husband. They were so powerful, they were considered to be able to do this, something that we would no longer accept today. Now, in agricultural society, it's such an important society, it frames how people live. In an agricultural society, you need large families, not small families. Generally, all agricultural societies have lots of children as opposed to few children for a variety of reasons. And it's not because there's no television. Or it might be.